Hi, my friends. My name is Ryan Freeman. Welcome to my life and welcome to this channel. For my returning subscribers, thank you for always coming back. And if you're new, I hope you stay. Today, I will talk about a notice that I received from the DMV. I live in California. It does matter because each state is handling this issue slightly different, but there's general relevance no matter where you are in America. So here is my notice from the DMV, and it is asking me sort of routinely to renew my driver's license. No big deal. However, this gives me an option to apply for a Real ID. So California is asking me to renew my driver's license, and it's giving me two different options. One, the standard traditional driver's license, or get a Real ID that will look like a California's driver's license, but have a special star as well as a different electronic readout. Okay, so first of all, what is the Real ID? I am not an expert. I'm going to give you guys my understanding. I have a little history with this. Back in 2005, I was on the speech and debate team at Cal State Fullerton, and my very first speech at my very first tournament was on the Real ID. I won't get too much into my politics, but I really like freedom of privacy, and I disdain the government coming in and surveying us in any capacity. And the Real ID sort of first got attention after September 11th. There was a 9/11 commission, and that commission was trying to shore up all of the security problems to prevent another terrorist attack like what happened on September 11th, 2001. This 9/11 commission produced a very large book. I think I actually have that. All right, sorry. So this is the 9/11 commission. I actually haven't read this. I just found it for $1 or 50 cents at a bookstore, and I figured I'd just have it. But in any case, in this, it recommended, at least in one section, I don't think it actually took up a big part of it, but it recommended a consolidation of all the different databases concerning ID. So California has a identification database, and then Nevada has an identification database, and to my understanding, these do not actually connect. Nevada would need to request information from California's database for special circumstances like, who knows, a prosecution or a crime, something like that. The Real ID, it would merge all of these databases. If you want to get the Real ID in California, this comes with your little application, and you need to specifically request that you want the Real ID, not the normal California's driver's license. You need to bring in proof of identity like a birth certificate or a passport, your social security number. So you need to actually bring in either one of your pay stubs or a social security card. You need to bring in proof of a California residency, so like vehicle registration or your utility bills, and those are the main pieces of data that you need to bring. So why would I get the Real ID if it requires all of this extra documents and I can get a regular California's driver's license? The main reason is that if I have a Real ID, I can use an airplane, I can travel domestically. You still need a passport traveling internationally, but in order to travel domestically, any domestic flights, you will need to show your Real ID by a specific date. This program has rolled out very slowly as some states have pushed for extensions, some states have tried to fight it. But also you won't be able to enter any federal buildings unless you have a Real ID. So actually, in a certain way, your normal California's driver's license, which you used to be able to fly in America with, is actually going to get degraded. So that's sort of an incentive for a lot of people to get the Real ID. You'll still be able to fly in America using a passport, but not with your driver's license. Also, why are some people against the Real ID? Let's just talk about that. First, I think it probably goes to states' rights. This was something the states didn't want, but the federal government continually put pressure on each and every state and used little slick tactics. Now, oh yeah, back to my 2005, I was on the speech and debate team at my university, and I gave a speech against the Real ID. That's because I'm for privacy rights. Now, there's a lot of people, libertarians or people on the far right, that do not like the government intruding in their lives, and they're doing it, right? I mean, they've intruded in our lives. We've caught them surveilling us. A lot of times they mask it in the idea that they're trying to keep us safe. Oh, we're going to protect you from terrorists. But in fact, they are spying on us. That was the whole big thing with Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden, who for many people now is a hero, but he's been condemned by the U.S. government as well as intelligence agencies because he actually broke the news that our government, although they testified in front of Congress that they were not spying on us, not collecting data, which is against the law, Snowden broke the news that actually the government was. So there's a lot of reasons not to trust your government, okay? We need our government, right? Because they're going to keep the roads running. They're going to keep us safe from international dangers. But time has shown in history that if you don't watch the government, they just take more and more out of your freedom, out of your life, because they're in the business of control. That's what their business is. Now, they might say that they need more control over your life, more control over your data, because they're going to keep you safe, and usually governments will use fear for that purpose. Read 1984 by George Orwell. Governments will use all sorts of ways to get more control over our lives, and sometimes they do it with fear, like in 1984, or with after September 11th with the Patriot Act and the Real ID Act, I believe, is part of that as well. And then they're sneaky, right? They'll attach these little bills, something like this on top of a tsunami relief bill. And so I think it's a good idea for us to watch the government. It doesn't mean that we fight them on everything, but that we resist when we feel they're infringing on our rights unwantedly. It was in Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. I believe he's the most famous or accomplished American writer of all time. We could debate about that, but I've heard people say that, people smarter than me. So he writes in the Leaves of Grass towards the beginning, and it was a section he was addressing the states about the U.S. government, and he said, resist much, obey little. So Walt Whitman, the most accomplished of American writers, his message to the states and a message to all of us in regards to our government is resist much, obey little. And then when you look at today, and we've become very docile, right? The government tells us, wear a mask, we wear a mask. The government tells us, and we come up with many good reasons to do so, and we get scientific data, and of course we don't want to piss off our neighbors or look like a weirdo. It's the biggest reason, right, that we follow a lot of these rules. But we've become a very docile citizenry. I'm sorry to say. Have you ever looked at I know I'm sort of rambling and going off topic. I'll come back to the Real ID. But if you go back to the Revolutionary War, and you read, people like John Adams and sort of the people who were at the center core of America's fight for independence from England, and what they were fighting about and what their beliefs were, and that they were willing to put their life on the line to protect themselves and their liberty. And of course, you could find lots of problems with these people. And when we look in the past, it was a different era. They had different beliefs, and we can criticize them on other issues. But they believed in freedom very strongly, and that's what our country is founded on. You know, this idea. We have the Statue of Liberty, you know, the Statue of Liberty. And this Real ID, many people say, is an infringement on our civil liberties because it's giving more data to the government, privacy activists, privacy people who are against this. They say that it allows the government to paint a clearer picture of who we are. Just like when you go online, private companies like Facebook or Google or what your favorite website is, they attach cookies to everything that you browse, and they're constantly collecting your data to get a better image of you. If you watch the recent documentary that made news, The Social Dilemma, there was a great visualization of how important it is for these companies to generate an image of us because they're able to sorry, there's a garbage truck. I'm just going to pause it real quick. Sorry about that. That garbage truck is now out of the way. Like I was saying, in The Social Dilemma, this documentary that has been very popular in the last several months, making an image of us, the most accurate image of us, by collecting our data, by sort of crossing layers of our privacy that were never crossed before, that we willingly give up because we want to use their services. But in fact, we're sort of railroaded into accepting all those cookies because even though we might be able to deny them, then the websites don't work, and it's a hassle. But by using these services, they get the data. They're able to sell that data. They're able to use that data to persuade us and even shift our opinions about issues. And so this is a bit of an issue. You know, governments and people trying to sell you things have always been trying to persuade you to either endorse their product or endorse their politics. But now with technology, the stakes are a little bit higher. It's like war. I know I'm using analogies going off. I'll come back. It's like war, right? War's always been bloody, but with nuclear missiles and Tomahawk missiles and Apache helicopters, the stakes have been upped. And so I think the same thing with privacy. And I think that we should take Walt Whitman's words to heart. And we should remember the great American, I guess the trash truck's not gone, but let's just go. We should just take the greatest American writer's words back into our lives, resist much, obey little, because although we want to be safe, what's going to be, will it actually make us safer? Some people say it won't. Some people say that actually the September 11th hijackers, for the most part, didn't really, they in fact used mostly proper identification and correct identification, that there was some minor identification fraud, like extraordinarily minor identification fraud in one or two cases, but that this has nothing to do necessarily with keeping us safe. That's the argument for it, but in fact, they're just going to get a little more data on us and a little bit more control. And if you have this idea that the government actually has your best interest and your freedom and your privacy in their thoughts, then that's a nice notion. It's nice to think that the war on terror is really about fighting terror and keeping our country safe, and not about making cronies of politicians really, really rich. It's nice to think that, but you know, the problem with having these fantasies is that we get ourselves and our country into worse and worse situations, because it's only through the truth, which will set you free, that we can actually do anything about it. So that's my purpose of making this this little thing, this video, because I got this from the DMV, so I have to make the choice. I'm going to get a regular California's driver's license. Not saying that you should or you have to, but I thought I'd share my opinion. I did that speech back in 2005, made it to the finals, didn't win, but I had people following me because I was passionate. I would like to protect our civil liberties as much as I can. And I think I'm going to do more videos about that. Maybe my last name is Freeman. Maybe it's the fact that I just like to be free. But I think all humans desire that. And I think freedom is at the very core of our humanity. And when I see it slipping away, even with small justifications like, we're going to keep you safer. It's like, I'd rather be a little less safe and a little more free. Freedom is central to art, central to genius, to thinking. It's essential to life. And I don't want a Real ID intruding on me like that, you know. I'm going to just talk a little bit about this, what's happening with coronavirus. I'm scared because, you know, Bill Gates, and I'm not trying to get into a conspiracy. This is all stuff that you could read in articles. Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci, some of the people who are on the decision-making part, or at least the influential part of the policies that are being enacted. There are a lot of people who actually want sort of a health ID, or even a health chip that includes the fact that whether or not you're vaccinated against the virus, you know. So they actually want everyone to be vaccinated against the coronavirus, and that they'll make it so they're not going to break down your door to give you the vaccine, but you might not even be able to go to events, you know, where people congregate. Maybe not even go to restaurants or movie theaters unless you have this sort of vaccine identification. I don't like it, you know, and it's always couched in terms of, we're going to make the world safer, but fuck that, man. First of all, the world's already pretty damn safe. It's a lot safer than our ancestors had it, but it's a little less free in many ways, and I don't like that. So that's my spiel. Disagree or agree, what have you. I just thought I'd give you my opinion honestly, and that will be all. Bye.